A major human activity affecting land in Saint Lucia is how the built environment is being shaped. That includes housing, expansion of towns, and construction of accommodation for the tourism sector.
People need to have places to live and work, but the absence of proper land use planning is leading to hazardous development, which continues to have serious negative consequences for the island's future. The migration of rural residents working in the agriculture sector in the early 90s caused a corresponding challenge for urban housing in Saint Lucia. In the construction and housing sector, poor land use practices saw persons squatting and residing in structures which increased their vulnerability in times of disaster. This trend is continuing. Poor land management practices are driving building construction and farming on hazardous slopes and in flood-prone valleys. Government then moves ahead to provide roads and services to match this unplanned growth. In some cases, it is impractical to build roads to the houses in these settlements. Persons have to walk from the bottom of steep slopes up to their dwellings. Things don't end here. Often, residents living in these crowded developments have little alternative but to dispose domestic waste directly on the hillsides. This then finds its way into streams, causing a stench and adding to the degradation of soil and fresh water. The potential for outbreak of diseases loom large. Only 3.1% of St. Lucia's land is currently covered by buildings. The data indicates this number is growing. Recent reviews put the construction sector growth at nearly 11%. In 2017, approximately 1,200 new hotel accommodation units were built. 2018 saw a decline in construction, but government economic reports reveal an increase in growth. New development is projected to occur in the form of sports complexes, new commercial areas, major tourist resorts and niche tourism initiatives, public facilities, and port and airport developments. The question is, where would these developments take place on the land?
The least sloping arable lands in proximity of towns and villages in Saint Lucia is estimated at just over a quarter of the island. Land most accessible by roads with slopes most suitable for housing add up to a similar amount.
By contrast, 19 square kilometers of the country is currently covered by building cover of various forms, and about 110 square kilometers is taken up as farmlands.
Reviewing the outlook for economic development on the island, the possible introduction of cannabis as a new monocrop, the drive to produce more food locally, expansion of the housing sector, building more roads to accommodate growing fleets of cars, and construction of new hotels and resorts will all add up to filling more of the land utilization gap in the construction and agriculture sector over the next 10 to 50 years. With legalization of cannabis, agricultural land use could expand to over 200 square kilometers over the next 10 years, reclaiming abandoned banana fields.
If this does not happen, then there are multiple possibilities for agriculture depending on the effects of climate change and government policies. Over the next 10 years, it is estimated that land use for agriculture could reduce by up to 35 square kilometers. If there are food shortages, this means more food would be grown locally and up to 10 to 25 square kilometers more of St. Lucia's land could be taken up for farming. Projecting to 50 years, farmlands could shrink by over 50 square kilometers as climate change forces the country to adapt to small, less land-intensive farming practices. Through analysis of land use in the context of the construction sector, a more global perspective is taken into consideration. Climate change, and more so rising cost of living in developed countries, is making some parts of the world unlivable. People are on the move. Those who can't afford to move will do so. They most likely will have the financial means to live more comfortably in St. Lucia than St. Lucians. There could be an increased demand and solicitation of global citizens to invest, live, work, and play in St. Lucia in the coming decades. In this scenario, St. Lucians without the means to live comfortably on the island may migrate outwards. This is a harsh reality of the global consequences of economic inequality among the people of the world. Accounting for growth in the construction sector from a 2019 baseline, built cover is projected to increase from just 19 square kilometers to 32.5 square kilometers by 2029. Under a 50-year forecast and assuming significant global inward migration trends and improved building standards to withstand stronger storms, up to 100 square kilometers of the land in Saint Lucia could be covered due to construction activities. This will take massive amounts of foreign investments to achieve. While hard to imagine, this scenario is mostly what current government economic policies, mainly through tourism development, are directed towards. Growth is good for the economy, but only green and well-planned growth is good for the environment.
I mean, there are certain areas that we know for a fact it's the geography and geology has a bit to do with it. So when you look at Castries, for instance, we know that Castries is a basin, first and foremost. The city itself is at or below sea level, so you will always get flooding. But for certain other areas, you have the situation where it's just a matter of development. So we're cutting down tree cover, we're replacing the natural soil with concrete. We're providing hard surfaces for water to run off. So that's going to create flooding. You're going to see flooding a lot faster because the water is not allowed to, it has nowhere to go basically. So it's going to stay above ground and we'll see it.
Saint Lucia has a long list of studies, reports, policy documents, strategic plans, and more recently, a series of climate change adaptation plans. The country, however, does not have a legally adopted national land use plan which could guide the implementation of actions linked to these documents. Over a decade ago, a national land use plan was developed. However, it is yet to be approved. Where suitable, buildable, and arable land is limited on a 617 square kilometer island, a comprehensive land use plan is fundamental for the success of all other plans. This is evidenced by failure of past decisions and policies to prevent and reduce land degradation and the death of rivers and decline of natural habitats. The situations and trends observed in the context of land management in Saint Lucia in 2019 make it difficult to meet desired land improvement targets over the next 10 years. This projection is based on
trends in hillside erosion from current agricultural practices,
prevalence of the use of chemicals for pest and weed control in the field, projected increases in storm intensities and resulting landslides, limited investments in active slope management, poor coordination of water management in the field among stakeholders and communities,
the possibility of legalization of cannabis in the absence of being able to enforce soundly developed regulations for its cultivation,
the persistence of tourism and housing development in the absence of the enforcement of a technically sound national land use plan. The result of all of this is the decline of the quality of soil, water, and air, habitat fragmentation, and the loss of biodiversity.